मोबाइल इंटरनेट हमारी ये मदद की है कि अगर किसी को नहीं पता वो मेरा इंस्टाग्राम पेज देखते हैं, वो चीज़ें करती हूँ, अपनी वीडियो वगैरह बना के, मेहंदी की वीडियो बना के वो अपलोड करती हूँ इंस्टाग्राम पे।
তো ইশারা ভাষায় যোগাযোগ করার জন্য অবশ্যই ভিডিও কলে কথা বলতে হয়, ভিডিও করতে হয়। তো সেই ক্ষেত্রে মোবাইল ইন্টারনেট তাদের জন্য খুবই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ।
Nowadays, everything is attached to internet.
तो हमें पता चला कि इंटरनेट अच्छी चीज़ है, इसका फ़ायदा है।
আমাদের দেশে প্রত্যন্ত অঞ্চলে আমাদের যেসব বাক শ্রবণ প্রতিবন্ধী ভাই ও বোনেরা আছেন তারা আসলে তাদের পরিবারের কাছ থেকেই এই সহযোগিতাটা পায় না যে তারা মোবাইল এবং ইন্টারনেট ব্যবহার করতে পারবে। তাদের পরিবারের সচেতনতার অভাব রয়েছে, কারণ তারা মনে করে যে সে যেহেতু বাক শ্রবণ প্রতিবন্ধী ব্যক্তি, সে মোবাইল ফোন ইউজ করে কি করবে।
I didn't use the internet before because the first challenge is the money. To get the money was difficult since I have low income.
क्योंकि हमारे घर में इस चीज़ की इजाज़त बिल्कुल भी नहीं थी, सिर्फ कॉल के लिए उन्होंने कीपैड वाले मोबाइल रखे हुए हैं।
I sold farm produce to raise money to get my first phone. Then there were challenges. Some features on the phone were difficult to understand.
আমরা জানি আমাদের দৈনন্দিন জীবনে মোবাইল ইন্টারনেট একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ ভূমিকা পালন করে। আমার ছোট ভাই যেহেতু বাক শ্রবণ প্রতিবন্ধী ব্যক্তি, মোবাইল ইন্টারনেটটি তার জীবনের সাথে ওতপ্রোতভাবে জড়িত, কারণ সে মোবাইল ইন্টারনেটের মাধ্যমে সামাজিক, পারিবারিক এবং তার কমিউনিটি যারা লোক আছেন তাদের সাথে খুব সুন্দরভাবে যোগাযোগ করতে পারেন।
फिर करते करते काफ़ी टाइम लग गया, लेकिन ये है कि मेरे हस्बैंड उनको समझाते रहे साथ साथ कि नहीं, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं होगा, वो इससे इंटरनेट से हमें फ़ायदा ही होगा, नुकसान नहीं होगा कोई भी किसी किस्म का।
I received skills training about digital skills for smallholder farmers. Now it helps me to earn a living. I can produce crops which I didn't produce before. I just go to my phone, then I search for a particular crop, then I learn about it, I go and buy the seed.
মোবাইল ইন্টারনেট আমার ছোট ভাইয়ের জীবনটাকে অনেক বেশি সহজ করে দিয়েছে। সে ফানি, ইন্টারেস্টিং, মোটিভেশনাল, এডুকেশনাল, ইনফরমেটিভ অনেক ধরনের ভিডিও সে বানিয়ে তার ডেফ কমিউনিটির মাঝে ছড়িয়ে দেয়।
एक दिन मैं पूरी दुनिया को बता दूं कि मेरे घर के हालात बहुत ख़राब थे, इंटरनेट के ज़रिए मैंने इतनी तरक्की की है।
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to today's event on the State of Mobile Internet Connectivity Report 2025. My name is Abby Gleek, and I'm the Insights Director for Digital Inclusion at the GSMA. We're so pleased to have a wonderful range of speakers for you today. We'll be hearing from the authors of the report, who will share some of the key findings, reflections from GSMA colleagues, and we're also very excited to have discussions with industry experts from Grameenphone and MTN Group. Please do use the chat to introduce yourself and to ask any questions. Now, let's get started. It's my pleasure to introduce the GSMA Director General, Vivek Badinrath, for his reactions to this year's State of Mobile Internet Connectivity Report.
And hello, everyone. It's great to be here as we discuss the State of Mobile Internet Connectivity 2025 series. I think the video we just watched is an important reminder that behind every number we discuss today, there are real people and real stories. From Edodi, the farmer, using his phone to get information about his crops, to Sadia, the seamstress, who's using her phone to build a business. These stories remind us why access to mobile internet matters so deeply. There's no question that mobile connectivity is essential. It opens doors to services like healthcare, education, e-commerce, and financial services. And for millions, it creates opportunities to earn a living. Last year, mobile made up 84% of broadband connections in low and middle income countries. This is significant because it shows us that for many, mobile remains the primary and in many cases the only way most people are accessing the internet. Which brings me to the second number, 200 million. 200 million is the number of people that began using mobile internet on their own devices in 2024. This is a growth rate we haven't seen since 2021. So this is very positive news. Today, more people are using mobile internet than ever before. 4.7 billion, or 58% of the world's population, to be exact. These are good numbers and they deserve to be celebrated. We are indeed making progress. But we still have a challenge ahead, which brings me to my third number, 3.4 billion. The SOMIC report series shows that 3.4 billion, or 42% of the world, are still not using mobile internet. 4% are not covered by mobile broadband networks. This is the coverage gap. But the bigger challenge, 38%, or 3.1 billion people, live within mobile broadband coverage, but they do not use the mobile internet. This is the usage gap. So how do we address this? How do we ensure everyone is connected and able to access the full benefits of mobile internet? Well, first, we need to understand who is not connected and why. And our research shows that connectivity varies significantly by and within regions and countries. Those who are digitally excluded are more likely to be poorer, less educated, rural, persons with disabilities, or women, all groups that stand to gain the most from connectivity. With this information, we are working to create solutions that can specifically address their needs. Closing the coverage gap is one thing, ensuring everyone has access to mobile networks. And here we're making good progress. But the bigger challenge to solve is the usage gap. To address this, we need to go beyond coverage to address barriers like affordability, especially handset affordability, literacy and digital skills, safety and security concerns, and a lack of relevant content and services. Take affordability, for example. It is striking that 2/3 of those living within mobile broadband coverage don't own a phone. If you look at sub-Saharan Africa, an entry-level device costs 87% of the average monthly income for the poorest 20% of the population. This really highlights how important it is to address issues like handset affordability if we want to ensure that everyone is digitally included. It's also important to remember that the digital divide doesn't end at mobile internet adoption. Once people start using mobile internet, most will go on to use it every day, but often for only one or two activities. So it's important we make sure that as people come online, they also realize all of the benefits of mobile internet and how to use it to help them. At the GSMA, we're working to help address these barriers through a number of initiatives. Our mobile internet skills training toolkit provides people with the basic skills to use mobile internet. Our Connected Women Commitment Initiative is accelerating digital and financial inclusion for women. And our Handset Affordability Coalition brings together stakeholders to work on how we can make handsets more affordable. As our world becomes more connected, we're committed to doing our part to make sure no one is left behind. Closing the digital divide won't be easy, but it's vital we get this right, or we risk deepening the divide as technologies like AI accelerate. Now, more than ever, it's crucial that people in low and middle income countries are not just using AI, that they are building it too. But to do this, they need access to mobile internet and digital content in their own languages. Today, over 7,000 languages are spoken around the world, yet large language models are being developed in only a few. This creates a new and dangerous language data gap, one that limits the reach of AI and deepens the divide between those who can benefit and those who cannot. Which brings us back to the real challenge, tackling the usage gap and ensuring everyone can access and benefit from mobile connectivity. Today, I look forward to hearing from the team as they share the latest insights from the SOMIC report series and what more we can do to expand access to mobile internet for all.
So it's great to hear Vivek's perspective on the data points that stood out to him and his reflections on how addressing the digital divide continues to be a priority for GSMA. So now let's take a deeper look at this year's data and trends with the report's co-authors, Matthew Shanahan, Senior Insights Manager in our Connected Society team, and Kalvin Bahia, Principal Economist at GSMA Intelligence.
Thanks for the introduction, Abby. Hello and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all joining us online today. So we publish new research on the state of mobile internet connectivity every year, but this year we actually decided to do something a bit different. What has previously been one all-encompassing report is now a series of 6. We have an overview report, which provides a condensed version of the key findings from across a series, and 5 thematic deep dive reports. This research draws from our annual GSMA Consumer Survey, a nationally representative survey, which was administered face-to-face across 15 countries in 2024, the GSMA Mobile Connectivity Index, also known as MCI, and GSMA Intelligence Data and Modeling. Today, we'll highlight some of the key findings, and I encourage you to explore the full series for deeper regional and country insights. So let's begin by taking a look at the latest data for global connectivity. If we look at the left-hand side of the slide, we can see how the number of people that are connected around the world has increased over the years. As Vivek mentioned, in 2024, 4.7 billion people were connected to mobile internet, more than ever before. On the right-hand side of this slide, we have a bar chart showing the growth in recent years. Here we see that from 2020 to 2023, growth slowed down and then remained flat. But in 2024, it actually started to pick up again, with roughly 200 million people adopting mobile internet. This level of growth had last been seen in 2021. The vast majority of growth is coming from low and middle income countries, so we use the acronym LMICs, where 93% of the unconnected population lives. Looking next at infrastructure, we can see that 5G network coverage, that's the segment in orange, now covers more than half the world's population at 54%. Meanwhile, 4G deployments reached 93%, having slowed considerably in recent years. Globally, 96% of the population are now covered by a 3G or higher network. In the black and gray segments, you can see what we call the coverage gap, which is the proportion of the population who have either no coverage or live within 2G coverage only. In 2024, around 300 million people were living in areas without mobile broadband coverage, having reduced by around 40 million. 75% of this reduction came from sub-Saharan Africa. Communities that make up the remaining coverage gap are predominantly rural, low income, and sparsely populated. More than half live in areas with no pre-existing mobile infrastructure. So the data in these 2 slides have shown positive signs. But of course, growth at the global level does not mean every country and everyone is benefiting. Stark divides persist. Let's consider a high-level view of what the data from these slides means in terms of digital inclusion. Globally, 58% of people were connected to mobile internet in 2024. That's 4.7 billion people. However, there is still a significant digital divide. 42% of the population, roughly 3.4 billion people, are still not using mobile internet. This can be broken down into 2 groups. Firstly, those that do not live within a mobile broadband network. We saw this 4% on the previous slide, and we call this the coverage gap. And secondly, people who live within a mobile broadband network but are not yet using it. We call this the usage gap. In 2024, 38% of global population, that's 3.1 billion people, made up this usage gap. And the majority, over 90% of those not using mobile internet, live in areas already covered by a mobile broadband network. So it's important to highlight here that 2/3 of these do not own a mobile phone. Working towards greater digital inclusion means focusing largely on this significant and persistent usage gap. Here we can see a map showing how the connected usage gap and coverage gap figures vary by region. If I can draw your attention mainly to the orange boxes, the usage gaps for each region, you will see that Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East and North Africa, and South Asia have the largest usage gaps at 65%, 51%, and 50% respectively. If we then take a look at the gray boxes, the coverage gaps, we see that Sub-Saharan Africa still has a notably large coverage gap at 10%. Connectivity continues to lag significantly in least developed countries, LDCs, landlocked developing countries, LLDCs, and small island developing states, SIDS, compared to other low and middle income countries. While 54% of the population in LMICs are mobile internet subscribers, this drops to 25% in LDCs, 29% in LLDCs, and 38% in SIDS. Moreover, none of these three groups have seen an increase in their growth rate of mobile internet adoption since 2021. Now, it follows that the majority of the countries with high coverage gaps are also in LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS. While coverage has been expanding globally, it is important for us to be aware that there are still a number of countries where the coverage gap remains quite large. Globally, 29 countries highlighted in red here still have a coverage gap of more than 10%. The usage gap is also especially prominent in LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS. But it is also important to look at not just the usage gap percentages, but what these percentages mean in terms of actual number of people. If we look at the absolute number of people in each country making up the usage gap, we can see that the top 20 countries make up 68% of the global usage gap. Analysis by the GSMA estimated that closing the usage gap would add $3.5 trillion in total additional GDP over an 8-year period. More than 90% of that benefit, roughly $3.2 trillion, would accrue to LMICs as they account for the vast majority of the unconnected. Importantly, it's worth highlighting that connectivity varies within countries by demographic too. In 2024, across low and middle income countries, adults in rural areas were 25% less likely to use mobile internet than in urban areas, and women were 14% less likely than men to use mobile internet. But our work does not end at getting people connected. In our report series, we analyze how people experience what we call the mobile internet user journey, starting with mobile ownership, moving to mobile internet awareness and adoption, and ending with regular and diverse use of mobile internet. Here we see the percentage of respondents averaged across our 15 survey countries who reached each stage. What I want us to focus on here is how people are engaging with mobile internet once they start using it. For this, we need to look at the final segments of a journey, stages 4 through 6. Looking at stages 4 and 5, we see that most of those who adopt mobile internet use it daily. An average of 52% of people across the countries surveyed had adopted mobile internet, and 44% use it daily. For stage 6, diverse daily mobile internet use, we define that as using mobile internet for at least 3 different types of activity daily. And this falls to 33% as usage is often limited to just 1 or 2 activities. So taking everything we've looked at into consideration, yes, we need to address the coverage gap, but importantly, we also must tackle the significant and persistent usage gap, as well as ensure people are able to use the internet regularly and for a range of use cases that meet their needs to ensure meaningful connectivity for all. To better understand the barriers people face at various stages of this user journey, I'll now pass it over to Kalvin, Senior Director of Economics at GSMA Intelligence and co-author of this report.
Great. Many thanks, Matt, and hello to everyone watching. It's a pleasure to be presenting the findings of the State of Mobile Internet Connectivity report today. As Matt said, I'm going to summarize the key findings on the main barriers to mobile internet adoption and use. These barriers include lack of affordability, knowledge and skills, relevant content and services, as well as safety and security concerns, in addition to access to other fundamental enablers like electricity and formal ID. And many underserved populations, such as women and people with disabilities, tend to experience these barriers more acutely, and the report considers each of these in detail, as well as breakdowns by country and rural urban populations. But for this presentation, I'll just focus on some of the main highlights. At each stage in the journey from mobile ownership to regular and diverse use, users experience barriers and drop off over that journey. An important step in that journey to using mobile internet is being aware of it and actually understanding that the internet can be accessed on a mobile device. Between 2017 and 2019, the growth in awareness of mobile internet significantly increased across all of our surveyed LMICs. Since then, there's been marginal change. So once awareness in countries reaches 70 to 80%, the growth tends to slow, which suggests that the final 20 to 30% becomes harder to reach. Overall, awareness is relatively high across the survey countries. In most of them, more than 80% of the population are at least aware of mobile internet. However, we can see that in 4 countries there, 25 to 41% of the population have yet to hear of mobile internet. And in many countries, we also see that some demographics are less likely to be aware, including women and those living in rural areas. And these persistent gaps in awareness highlight a concerning barrier to broader mobile internet uptake. Then once people are aware of mobile internet, the top reported barrier to starting to use it are affordability, primarily of internet-enabled handsets and literacy and digital skills. The report also highlights some distinct regional patterns in how the top barriers to mobile internet adoption are reported. In sub-Saharan Africa countries, handset affordability is consistently reported as the top barrier. In contrast, across most of our surveyed Asian countries, limited literacy and digital skills were identified as the primary challenge. Those trends align pretty well with previous years. In Latin American countries that we survey, safety and security concerns have historically been the most commonly reported top barrier. But interestingly, recent data suggests a shift as affordability of internet-enabled handsets and literacy and digital skills are becoming more prominent concerns than they were before. Once people start using mobile internet, the barriers to further use then differ. Last year's research showed that across our surveyed countries, an average of 43% of mobile internet users wanted to use it more, but they face barriers in doing so. Now, this year, we find that the top reported barriers to further use vary by country, but the most commonly reported barriers are safety and security concerns, affordability, particularly of mobile data, and the connectivity experience. Regarding safety and security barriers, these include concerns about receiving unwanted online contact, harmful content, and scams and fraud. As more people come online, addressing these concerns is going to be essential to ensure they feel confident that they can keep themselves, families, and their personal information safe. In terms of barriers related to the connectivity experience, this tends to be reported more in countries where the majority of internet users are still using a feature phone or 3G smartphone. And this highlights the importance of driving greater use of 4G and 5G so people can realize a wider range and richer set of online use cases. Given that affordability of handsets is the single most cited top barrier to adoption amongst those aware of mobile internet, but those who aren't using it, our previous research has also shown that the device cost is the primary barrier to mobile ownership more generally. We've been tracking handset affordability over the past few years. 2/3 of the population that live in areas with mobile broadband coverage, so that means 2/3 of the usage gap that Matt discussed earlier, do not own or have access to a mobile phone. Across low middle income countries, the median affordability was relatively stable this year. In our most recent assessment, median affordability of devices in low middle income countries was around 16% of monthly GDP per capita. There was, however, significant variation by country and region, which we detail in the report. For example, affordability significantly worsened in 27% of LMICs, but it improved in 37% of them. We can also see in the chart on the right that affordability of devices shows significant variation by population segment. While across LMICs, the affordability of an entry-level device is 16% of average monthly income, it's equivalent to almost 36% of average monthly income for the poorest 40% of the population. And if we look at the poorest 20% of the population, it will cost almost half of average monthly income. In sub-Saharan Africa, an entry-level device costs almost 90% of average monthly income for the poorest 20%. This emphasizes the importance of considering affordability in more detail at a country level, especially for the digitally underserved. In addition to tracking affordability of devices, we also monitor the affordability of mobile data services with a focus on packages that allow consumers to access 1 gigabyte, 5 gigabyte, and 20 gigabytes of data per month. Overall, the affordability of 1 gigabyte, which is the orange line on this chart, has remained fairly stable. But as we highlight in the report, 2024 marked the first year where the median affordability of 1 gigabyte in sub-Saharan Africa fell below 2% of average monthly income, which is the aspirational affordability target set by the ITU. And this means that all regions now have a median affordability for 1 gigabyte of below 2% of monthly income. When looking at affordability of 5 gigabyte baskets, which is the red line, 2024 marked the first year where affordability across LMICs fell below the 2% threshold. Now, this shows that mobile operators are responding to greater demand for larger allowances and allowing consumers to access more data affordably. In terms of the 20 gigabyte basket, which is the short dark red line at the top, we did not see a significant change in terms of median affordability, though this is only the second year we've been monitoring this bundle, so we can't conclude any longer term trends there. While the affordability of mobile data has continued to improve over time, it remains a significant barrier to access. It remains a significant barrier for the underserved, particularly the poorest populations. And as we saw earlier, it can also act as a barrier to further mobile internet use. So I'd like to end this particular section by highlighting some of the calls to action that we emphasize in the report. You can see these are grouped according to the 5 main barriers to mobile internet adoption and usage. Closing the digital divide requires deliberate, focused efforts to address these barriers to digital inclusion, and greater action by all stakeholders is needed to ensure people can access and effectively use mobile internet and that the underserved are not left behind. Of course, these recommendations don't exist in isolation. They're interconnected and must be addressed through collaborative, holistic approaches. And structural barriers such as income gaps, educational disparities, and restrictive social norms that underpin the digital divide also need to be tackled. To create lasting change, these efforts have to be sustained and scaled to ensure that no one is left behind in the digital age. And thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Kalvin. So that wraps up our key findings presentation. You can access the full reports with a lot more detail from the QR code on the slide on the screen. I'd also like to thank those who have made this possible. So the report is funded by the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, and the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, SIDA, with research funded in part by the GSMA, as well as the Gates Foundation. Now, before we wrap up our part of this session, I have a follow-up question for you, Kalvin. So in the data I presented, we saw promising growth in coverage and a very stubborn usage gap. We often get asked how satellite technology can help, and in this year's report, we did a spotlight on satellite and the role it can play. I was wondering if you could share a bit about the role satellite technology plays in helping us drive greater digital inclusion.
Thanks, Matt. It's a very good question. And to answer, I think it's worth covering the 3 ways in which satellite can provide or support connectivity. So the first is by providing fixed satellite broadband connectivity to consumers. And probably the best known provider right now is Starlink, which as of September 2025 had more than 7 million subscribers globally. And while the service is seeing very impressive growth, around half their customers are in North America. The service is typically targeted at households in high-income countries that live in areas with limited fixed broadband alternatives, along with higher-income households in LMICs. And this is actually evident from the cost of access. In the report this year, we show that across 50 low middle income countries, a monthly Starlink subscription is 6 times higher than the ITU affordability target and up to 14 times more expensive than mobile data plans. If we consider the upfront cost, which needs to include both the device and the satellite equipment, it's around 7 times more costly than the upfront cost of an internet-enabled mobile device. So what this means is that satellite broadband provides excellent coverage in remote areas, but it doesn't really address the main barriers that prevent people from using the internet that we discussed earlier, particularly on affordability. The second way in which satellite can support connectivity is to provide backhaul solutions for mobile base stations. This is particularly important in remote areas where there's no viable microwave backhaul link. I won't cover that in too much detail now, but we do include some examples in the report. The third way in which satellite can support connectivity has probably garnered the most attention in recent years, which is direct-to-device connectivity. This is where connectivity to a mobile device is provided directly from a satellite without the need for a terrestrial base station or a large dish. From a digital inclusion perspective, satellite technology can certainly help close the coverage gap, both in populated and uninhabited areas, by providing backhaul solutions to mobile sites or by providing those D2D services that go beyond messaging. But it cannot close the usage gap, as it doesn't address the main barriers preventing people who live within mobile broadband coverage from using the internet.
Thanks, Kalvin. So it sounds like satellite can play an important role in tackling some of the challenges that we face, but it also sounds like it has its limitations, especially when it comes to tackling the usage gap.
Yeah, that's right. It's a very good summary. And before we go, actually, Matt, I had one final question for you. So bringing all of this year's report findings together, what would you say your key takeaways from this year's SOMIC report?
Sure. Thanks, Kalvin. So I have 3 striking data points that I want people to walk away with, and 3 big messages. Regarding the data points, I picked these 3 because I think they really help provide nuance to the challenges we face in internet-enabled handset ownership and meaningful use of mobile internet. So we'll start with those. First, it's important to recognize that when we look at the usage gap, we see that 2/3 do not yet own a device. That represents a really substantial proportion of the unconnected population, and of course poses a significant hurdle to getting people online. Barriers, including lack of affordability of internet-enabled handsets, are contributing to this and must be tackled if we want to achieve greater digital inclusion for all. Second, we can't just draw the line at owning a device. When we look at the types of devices mobile internet subscribers are using, we see that globally, 16% of mobile internet subscribers are still using 3G smartphones or feature phones to access the internet. This reaches as high as 60% in sub-Saharan Africa. We spoke earlier about how 4G and 5G network coverage is expanding. Well, with so many people still using older technology handsets, a substantial proportion of people are actually not able to make use of these better quality connections. These devices will be limiting their ability to benefit from the improved coverage and will be constraining their internet experience. Finally, we know that 58% of the world's population are now connected through their own device. Well, an additional 9% are using the internet on a shared device. We know that borrowing devices allows much needed access to services. However, it does also limit how people use the internet, and by extension, how people can benefit. Analysis shows that those using shared devices use them less frequently and for fewer activities than those who own one. As for my 3 big messages, first, the growth rate in mobile internet adoption increased again after years of decreasing. So this is really positive and something we want to see continuing to grow. Second, the global coverage gap is quite small, and in 2024, there was a notable improvement. However, for some countries, this does still remain a significant challenge. Third, the usage gap remains really substantial. It poses a significant challenge ahead, but addressing that challenge offers significant opportunities, both economic and social. Thank you everyone so much for listening. Back over to you, Abby.
Thanks so much, Matthew and Kalvin. So as we heard, while more people than ever before are using mobile internet, significant digital divides still persist. We're now going to hear from Yasir Azman, CEO of Grameenphone, in discussion with Claire Sibthorpe, Head of Digital Inclusion at GSMA, on the approaches Grameenphone is taking to address the barriers. Yasir and Claire, over to you.
Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it. I know our time is limited, so I'm going to kick off with my first question. As you can see, our latest data highlights that we really need to focus on addressing that usage gap and the key barriers that are preventing people from going online, such as handset affordability and digital skills, as well as other challenges like relevance and safety and security. So I'm really curious to know what your organization is doing to scale efforts to accelerate digital inclusion, and specifically, really particularly keen to know on what's you seen as having had the most impact so far in terms of addressing the barriers.
Thank you, Clara. Thank you for inviting me. It's very important, the topic we are discussing, and this is what we live with. This is what we are here for every day. And if you know Grameenphone, when we started our operation back in 1997, the core of its operation is inclusion, the bringing in empowerment at the hand of rural women with the connectivity, and give them the economic freedom. And that's the journey we started, and that is why today, this is a trusted brand, and we continue that work. There is a long way to go still, but we evolved and we refocused as is needed. So at this point of time, currently, as if we talk about that, what we're trying to do is mostly through different partners, international partners, we are targeting different marginalized communities to really help them to upskill their digital skill set and education in certain areas so that they get the most out of it. And at this point of time, we have Plan International Bangladesh. With them, we have actually trained almost 3.3 million marginalized population across the country, covering 32 districts and 1,367 different schools, sitting on the courtyard and involving more than 500 communities. So the model is through partnership, through local people to go who really need this and run digital skill set development, and as well as run different modules on like online safety. It's like, how do you use the citizen services provided by the government? How do you do the mobile banking, e-commerce, F-commerce? So these are the modules, the training modules we are running today. We have seen some encouraging progress. Some of the numbers, if I highlight that daily internet usage over this last 2 years period when we are running this program has gone up to 81% from 68. Internet usage for education only has gone up from 12% to 54% within these communities. And we see that online income generation has gone double from 6% to 12%. And usage of internet for citizen services, the government services like birth registration, it was from 0 to 74%, which tells us that the effort we are putting together with the local communities and the partners as far as our educational activities, the training activities on the digital skills that going on, it's creating good impact in the society and those who really need it. On top of that, we understand that unless you have the device at their hand, it's like it doesn't help. So that's an area where we had some regulatory barriers for long. We were not able to provide, the SIM lock devices, and unless you are able to do that, you're not able to subsidize who will take that risk. Because you need the financial institution as a partner into it. You need the digital service providers to come and bundle with the devices. So to provide a good subsidy or to provide a good bundle, we needed to have the SIM lock devices permitted by the regulator, and that is something I would say the big progress we made, that now we are able to do that, and we are bringing in different offers. So I believe that the educational activities we are doing on certain specific areas, the target segment, what we have defined, 8 different marginalized communities, and the work we are doing with the regulators to see the devices coming at everyone's hand, those are creating impact as I share those numbers with you.
Great, very impressive. Good to see you're tackling some of the top barriers like handsets and skills, and also that you're seeing some really good impact numbers. I mean, real progress. I mean, still a long ways to go, but the work you're doing is having significant progress. So that's really great to see. Thank you so much for sharing. I'd be curious to know from, the work you're doing, what are your kind of the key learnings that you've sort of had that you might want to share with this audience? So what are the things that you've seen has worked really well, and where have been the challenges that you've faced as you've been rolling these out?
I go by, highlighting top 3 always, and if I take the number 1 is, of course, the human connection. We are talking about an unconnected population. We are talking about marginalized communities without having the basic literacy and digital skill set. So unless you are able to use the local communities, the seniors and youth in the both end, and the opinion leaders, it gets very difficult to get the access and have the ice breaking. So it's important that you have the human connection when you approach the whole thing. And number two is the partnership. It's like we are here to have develop good service with an affordable price, but to have the access to the local communities, to have the partnership, those are working for the development of the different societies from different angles. International partners like UNDP, UNICEF, BRAC previously from local NGO set, and currently with Plan International Bangladesh. It is important that we have the right partnership and you get the synergy effect out of it. And the last but not least, the gender lens. It's like you can't have accept all the social taboo and barrier. You need to take women on board. We believe and we have seen once a mother is having the skill set and having the access, it gets easier the whole family to accept it and get benefit out of it, and it works for their both personal development and economic freedom. So I would once again re-emphasize that human connection, the partnership, and extremely important the gender lens to get going on these areas. And of course the commitment from the corporates is important to facilitate this journey.
Great. That's really useful to hear. Yeah, as you say, commitments, partnerships, and making sure you really have that gender lens is critical. So super useful to hear. Thank you so much. I just have one final question for you, which is if you were to look ahead in the next sort of year, what's the one challenge that keeps you up at night? What's the thing that you're most determined to try and tackle as we move forward to address the usage gap?
Yeah, it's difficult to say one. There are of course multiple, but one thing is this big goal that bring everyone on board. With the digital skill set inclusion, you can't have a society divided unless you are able to take everyone on board. The nation and society will not move forward. And the new technologies like AI coming in, it's making more division. So it should not be at the hand of privileged society. So for me, it's important, and what keeps me awake, to bring the basics right first. Everyone needs to have a connectivity solution at their hand with basic literacy to thrive online. It is important to understand it is not only connectivity, it's whether you are able to use it and whether this awareness gets into action. And millions are not just connected online, they are able to thrive online. That is what something it keeps us as a team awake and drive and try to make this, bring the solutions at their hand. This is what we live, this is what is our everyday job, and this is what we work with our regulators.
Great, thanks. And it is important to remember as we think about these new technologies that not everybody's online, and we really need to get those fundamentals right. So thank you so much for your time and your insights today. Really appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Yasir, and thank you, Claire. It's so great to hear about the successes of your work on strengthening digital skills and your reflections on the importance of human connection in supporting people to learn confidently. Now, as we move to Africa, it's my pleasure to introduce the CEO of MTN Group, Ralph Mupita, speaking with Claire Stibthorpe on the approaches MTN Group is taking to reach more underserved customers.
Hi, Ralph. Thank you so much for giving us your time today and joining us, sharing your insight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know we have limited time, so I'm just going to jump into the questions if that's okay.
That's okay.
So, we just heard the latest insights from our State of Mobile Internet Connectivity Report, which talks about the key barriers to adopting and using mobile internet, things like affordability and skills. I was just wondering at MTN if you could share a bit about how you're tackling these barriers in terms of being able to really scale efforts, and specifically what approaches are you finding are most impactful in reaching the underserved groups with digital inclusion?
Yeah, at MTN we are serving just over 300 million customers, and 165 million of them are regularly using the internet. So we've got a big chunk of our customers who are not being exposed to the benefits of the internet. And we know the global data sets for sub-Saharan Africa. Actually, the coverage gap is not the issue for us. The real issue we challenge with is the usage gap. 65% of adults over 18 years old on the African continent, they're not accessing the internet. So, we feel that this challenge is also an opportunity. It's an area of growth and focus for us. And so there are a couple of initiatives that we're focusing on. I think the first is with the current pricing of devices, we're looking at device financing. We've done some device financing initiatives in places like Uganda and are doing it more broadly. And we work with partner finance institutions. So that's one example of what we're doing to deal with the affordability issues. The second is really working with the ODMs and OEMs to really work at scale and with other third parties that we can bring the cost of handsets down. We believe that the magic will happen when you've got 4G, 5G handsets that are coming much closer to $20 per device. I think you'll have enormous and structural growth there. The third area is really around content, offering content so people get used to using the mobile internet and offering some of that for free. And so those are some of the initiatives at MTN that we're doing to drive, to deal with the usage gap that is quite prevalent across our markets.
Great, thanks for sharing it. It's good to hear that you're focusing on handsets, as you say, a big barrier in Africa. I was wondering, as you kind of try and implement these and to reach the most underserved, what are the kind of main challenges that you see that you're facing, and what are your strategies for also trying to overcome some of those?
One of the main challenges that we face, let's stay with the handsets, is that, when they arrive across the various African markets, there are all sorts of taxes that are put on top of, the cost of the devices. And these end up, making, a significant impact into the retail pricing that ultimately the customer would be able to buy. So that is a real challenge to deal with. And, we've been working with other MNOs, other operators on the African continent. Now we're talking about this handset affordability coalition, where we are engaging, governments to try and reduce, taxes that are related to handsets, because we think that the handsets are a stimulant to economic growth ultimately. I think the data sets are all there that if we have more and more, of the people in the world, particularly here in sub-Saharan Africa, using the internet, that's an accelerant to growth. So it will pay back in due course, for all the fiscal kind of friction that would happen if they didn't, tax handsets. So we think that's a really big issue, and it really needs an industry-wide coordinated effort to have impact that will ultimately accelerate the growth of the African continent.
Great, and it's good to hear that it's, as Uni said, it needs a multi-stakeholder approach. Are there any other, I know you do, as you said, you do content and skills initiative, anything else you wanted to flag in terms of some of the challenges that you're facing and where you think we need to focus?
Yeah, I mean, obviously skills and language, universal or at least broadly spoken languages like English, French on the African continent. There is, 1,500 plus languages across the African continent. So we think one of the barriers is a lack of local content as well as local language, that the content that is being used, for social and business purposes is relevant to people on the continent. So I would argue that language is a big barrier that we have to deal with in terms of the content. And the price of data, I think the cost of data has actually been coming down, certainly from an MTN perspective. We've seen the effective rate of a cost gigabyte of data is actually coming down sustainably, like 20% per annum. So, these are, yes, there are some barriers, but there's a lot of work that's going on to unlock some of those kind of more structural barriers.
Great, thanks. And I know we don't have a ton of time, so I might just ask you one last question, which is, if you were looking ahead and we were to meet like 1 year from now, what is the one success that you think you would love to be able to share in terms of digital inclusion in your markets?
I mean, I could name 10 plus things that I'd like to see, but the one that I'm really passionate about, which we've just launched as the G6, the 6 largest operators in Africa, all members of the GSMA, is the Handset Affordability Coalition, where we are going to governments, and we intend to go to the African Union and meet all the heads of states and make a case that the reduction or removal of taxes for handsets is going to be an accelerant for growth. In 12 months' time, if we succeed there, I would be very, very happy, and because I think we would have crossed the Rubicon, crossed an important milestone for driving increase in usage across Africa, which would then ultimately drive socioeconomic growth.
Great, thanks for sharing, and it's great to be working with you on these initiatives, and I hope we have some positive news again to share next year. So thanks again for your time, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Ralph and Claire. I'm really struck by your ambition for a $20 device. I'm confident that that $20 target can really move the needle, and especially when industry players pull together to ensure that these internet-enabled devices get into the hands of the underserved communities who need them, and that people are equipped with the basic skills to use them effectively. And we know that MTN are making a lot of efforts to support these areas as well. Now, finally, I'm delighted to hand over to Max Cavelier-Giacomelli, Head of Mobile for Development, GSMA, for his thoughts on all the insights shared today and what it means for how we tackle these digital inclusion priorities.
Thank you very much, Abby. Today, we've been reminded that mobile provides significant benefits to individuals, societies, and economies. In low and middle income countries in particular, it remains the primary, and in a lot of cases, the only way that most people access the internet. We need to recognize the progress that has been made. The world has never been more connected. 96% of the world's population is now covered by mobile broadband, and 58% are using mobile internet on their own device. But as we've heard today, a significant proportion of the population remains unconnected, and 90% of those not using mobile internet are living in areas already covered by mobile broadband, but face other barriers that prevent them from going online. The digital divide is wider in certain parts of the world, and for some segments of the population more than others, in particular women and people living in rural areas. It is particularly important that we address the barriers to digital inclusion holistically, and that we continue to tackle structural barriers such as income gaps, educational disparities, and restrictive social norms that also underpin the digital divide. The State of Mobile Internet Connectivity Report series highlights just how important it is that all stakeholders come together to tackle the complex, interconnected barriers people face to ensure everyone can access, use, and realize the benefits of internet connectivity. One thing is clear. In our increasingly digital world, it is more urgent than ever before that we address the digital divide. Coordinated, targeted action by all stakeholders involved is vital to ensure progress is inclusive for all. And we know what works. Stakeholders need to prioritize this issue with championship by senior management. Data needs to inform action. Targeted action must address the specific needs and barriers to those who are digitally excluded. And collaboration and partnerships are a must. No single organization or sector can solve this alone. Within Mobile for Development at the GSMA, our Connected Society and Connected Women programs are dedicated to accelerating digital inclusion for the underserved, working very closely with mobile operators, governments, international organizations, and other key partners. For instance, we have created MIST, the Mobile Internet Skills Training Toolkit, a free resource that has helped our partners train over 80 million people across more than 40 countries in basic digital skills needed to access and use the internet. Through our Connected Women Commitment initiatives, over 50 mobile operators partners have reached over 80 million additional women with mobile internet or mobile money services since 2016. And with our capacity building courses, we have trained hundreds of policymakers on practical approaches to bridging the digital divide. Our work remains grounded in industry-leading research and data. In addition to the insights that were shared in today's webinar, we produce in-depth studies on key barriers to digital inclusion, such as digital skills or handset affordability. Extensive research digs specifically into the mobile gender gap. And we also have our Mobile Connectivity Index, which provides comprehensive data on the key enablers of connectivity across more than 170 countries, helping guide informed decisions and targeted action. At Mobile for Development, digital inclusion isn't just a priority. It is a critical foundation to realizing the significant socioeconomic benefits that mobile internet can provide to individuals, to businesses, and to economies. The impact we've made alongside our partners reflects what's possible when we work together to accelerate digital inclusion. In particular, I want to thank our donors who are making this work possible. The UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, the Swedish International Development and Cooperation Agency, CEDA, and the Gates Foundation, who support our digital inclusion efforts, amongst others. In conclusion, it is truly encouraging to see continued growth in connectivity, but we still have a long way to go and some significant gaps remain. But I'm personally convinced that together we can drive meaningful progress and continue to work towards a more inclusive, connected world where no one is left behind.
Thanks so much, Max. So that concludes our session today. Please do check out the full report series and all the interactive data on our website. A huge thanks to all our expert speakers today from Grameenphone and MTN Group and from across the GSMA. Thank you all for joining us.